Number 10. The Russian Theater Siege. When armed Chechens seized a theater in central Moscow and took 850 hostages in 2002, Russia ordered their elite counter-terrorist Alpha Commandos to storm the theater. The Commandos trained in a replica of the theater and used an unknown experimental gas to knock out both the hostages and the Chechens in the theater. The Alpha Commandos then stormed the theater from multiple angles in a coordinated attack. Most of the Chechens and hostages were knocked out by the unknown gas and the theater was secured. However, the unknown effects of the gas made it difficult for doctors to determine how to treat the hostages that were knocked out by the unknown chemical agent, and dozens died in the aftermath of the raid. Number 9. The raid to capture Osama bin Laden. In 2011, the CIA had found Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. 79 Navy SEALs and 1 military dog were sent in experimental stealth helicopters to either capture or kill Osama bin Laden. Despite one of the stealth helicopters crashing, the SEALs stormed the complex with no casualties and eliminated their target. Start to finish, the raid took 38 minutes with the successful completion of the Navy SEALs' objectives. Number 8. The Great Locomotive Chase. In 1862, during the American Civil War, members of the Union Army hijacked a train and took the locomotive deep into Confederate territory. Along the way, the Union forces on the hijacked train destroyed telegraph wires. Because the Union soldiers were destroying telegraph wires all along the rail line, other Confederate forces could not be warned. Eventually, however, the Union hijackers were caught and the leader of the operation was executed by hanging. Some other participants, however, either escaped or survived the war. Number 7. The Fort Eben-Emael Raid. The Belgian fort of Eben-Emael was built in 1935 to stop any German invasion of Belgium. The fort at the time was widely called impregnable and was the largest fort in the world. In 1940, during a daring operation, German gliders and paratroopers landed on the fort and prevented key bridges from being destroyed, while taking most of the Belgian garrison prisoner at the same time. Number 6. The capture of Edinburgh Castle. During the First War of Scottish Independence, Edinburgh Castle was occupied by the English. The Scottish Lord Thomas Randolph was determined to take it back. With just 30 men, he defeated the castle garrison by scaling the cliff wall by the castle. They reached the parapet and immediately surprised the garrison and forced them to surrender. Number 5. The Gran Sasso Raid. In 1943, Germany was beginning to fall on the losing side of World War II, and Benito Mussolini, Italy's fascist dictator, had been taken prisoner after Italy's Grand Council of Fascism passed a vote of no confidence and arrested Mussolini. Mussolini was then taken prisoner at a ski resort. Hitler then ordered a high-risk glider mission to save his friend and ally. German paratroopers and special forces then landed at the hotel and overwhelmed the 200 soldiers guarding Mussolini without firing any shots. After being freed, Mussolini said, "I knew that my friend would not forsake me." Number 4. Operation Frankton. In 1942, the British ordered a commando raid on the German-occupied French port of Bordeaux. The Germans had stationed multiple vessels in the heavily defended harbor. A British submarine brought 6 canoes with commandos to the harbor, and the commandos proceeded to paddle into the harbor. They silently put explosive charges on 6 vessels and detonated them. Winston Churchill would later say that the vessel sank by Operation Frankton shortened the war by about 6 months. Number 3. The raid at Cabanatuan. As World War II was drawing to a close, thousands of American prisoners were still being held by the Japanese in the Philippines. One camp in the Philippines, Cabanatuan, became the target of a daring American-Filipino commando raid. Together, the two groups broke into the Cabanatuan POW camp at night and rescued over 500 prisoners of war with the loss of just 2 men. Number 2. Operation Entebbe. In 1976, Palestinians and 2 German communists seized an Air France flight out of Tel Aviv. They immediately took hostages and redirected the flight to Entebbe Airport in Uganda. Israeli commandos then prepared a daring raid. They brought several cargo planes filled with commandos to Entebbe Airport. After shooting Ugandan checkpoint guards, they rushed into the airport terminal and freed 102 of the 106 hostages. The only Israeli casualty was Yonatan Netanyahu, who was the older brother of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Number 1. The St. Nazaire Raid. During World War II, the Nazis were operating out of a heavily defended dry dock in St. Nazaire, France. The British feared this port could be used as a safe harbor for German battleships to operate in the Atlantic Ocean. An obsolete destroyer with a small convoy of launch flotillas and torpedo boats were packed with British commandos and sent for the dry dock. The obsolete destroyer flew the German naval flag and was packed with explosives. When the British ships approached the dry dock, they posed as German vessels. However, eventually the Germans figured out that they were British ships and opened fire. The British destroyer was able to beach itself in the dry dock, and the Commandos jumped off onto the dock from their launch flotillas and began attacking key installations in the town of St. Nazaire. Eventually, all of the Commandos' escape craft were destroyed and the rest of the British ships had to retreat. The remaining Commandos fought until their ammunition ran out. The next day, the Germans had not defused the explosives on board the British destroyer beached in the dry dock. It exploded and damaged the dry dock and killed hundreds of German soldiers and officers. Because of the extensive damage, the dry dock was not repaired until nearly 10 years after the war ended. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video if you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and on Facebook to be notified about our videos as soon as they are released.